Hey guys, what's going on? I'm Daybreak and welcome back to another Daybreak reaction video. Mill just got stronger. We have Lumaru, Ruminous, and Humburst being added into the game. As a fellow Mill disliker, I don't necessarily hate it, but very much dislike the strategy. I'm hoping that these cards are not very good, but we'll see.
Today we're revealing one of my favorite new Elestrals and a strategy that I have been known to love and many others hate.
Yep,
it's
that's
time
me.
to talk about Mill in Daybreak.
What we got?
We got much more than Mill today as we count down every single day until July 12th when pre-orders open for Daybreak, so get it on your calendar. It's about to be hype. The first card we're revealing today is Lumaru, a beautiful new solar Elestral with 5 attack and 2 defense that has a super cool effect. When this Lumaru destroys an opponent's Elestral in battle, that opponent must send the top 3 cards from their deck to the underworld. This is the first card that we see that provides deck destruction or mill effects towards your opponent. That is a more offensive card. So Lumaru provides this support in terms of being able to be an offensive threat for mill. It also helps stop against Foretell and other solar decks, and it's just a 5 attacker in solar. So I really think Lumaru is going to see some really unique play.
Yeah, this card will absolutely see play in Solar. It's without a question. The effect is not like something that you necessarily need in Solar. If you're just playing Solar and you're not playing Mill, it's not really an effect that you care about that much. But it is a 5 attacker, which means that it's going to be played.
This is also an Elestral that really benefits from misenchanting. So you might see this enchanted with a water spirit at times, or maybe even a fire spirit as we break down the rest of the Daybreak metagame. But
that is absolutely true. I didn't even really think about that. If you don't really need the effect, if you're not playing solar, just misenchant it with water. Make it so you can attack over without having to worry about tsunami. And he's saying fire, which is interesting, because currently there's no real reason as to why you would enchant this with fire unless we're expecting eruption strategies to be a lot more apparent. But I think water is obviously the correct element to enchant this with. It's just a 5 attacker. But in that regard, why wouldn't you just play something like Sorlet over the in this strat, or Viscerous for that matter? Like, so if you were playing Mill, you're playing this. If you're not playing Mill, I just think something like Viscerous is just straight up better. Because if you just enchant it with Earth and you play 3, you just go ahead, you can get a bunch of them out. So this is sort of a worse version of Viscerous from that standpoint.
But Lumaru is one that you do not want to miss. Lumaru does indeed ascend into the powerful Ruminous. Ruminous is a 7 attacker with 4 defense, 2 solar, and it's got a super unique effect as well, that when this Ruminous deals damage to an opponent, so they're forced to expend spirits, that opponent must send the top 3 cards from their deck to the underworld for each spirit they expended, which means that if Ruminous can get buffed up through Nexus or acquiring a bunch of spirits and attack directly, you can legitimately mill like dozens of cards in a single attack. This card is going to be really interesting to watch. I'm curious to see what kind of cool decks, rogue decks that people can cook up with Lumaru and Ruminous and other mill strategies. I think this is the perfect balance of having an epic Elestral that can do some really cool stuff with milling your opponent without it being like annoying or oppressive. I really am excited.
No, I wouldn't necessarily say this is not oppressive. It's obviously it's not oppressive. It's a 2 cost, which makes it so that the effect can be a little more annoying since it's harder to get out. But it is annoying in my opinion because, as he said, if you are able to if you're just able to Nexus 2 onto it, it has 4, and you just attack directly with it, that's 4 damage. So your opponent's sending the top 12 cards from their deck to the grave, from the deck to Underworld. Now, the thing about this is, obviously, Mill probably will not be super amazing. There is still one more card to go in Humburst, which we'll see what that's like. So far, I'm not seeing anything super impressive about Mill. The thing about Mill is that now, from going from a super defensive strategy to now you can play Lumaru, which is a 5 attacker, it's a lot more offensive. So you can play a defensive and offensive thing. So Mill is getting a whole lot better just due to the fact that they have the flexibility in playing offense and defense.
About Ruminous.
We'll see what Humberst does.
Now, when we talk about Mill in Elestrals, you can't have that conversation without the beautiful little Humbust.
Humbust.
And Humbust is back in Daybreak. We've got a brand new
Hey, I expected that.
Humbust just
I was about to
flying
say
around each
that,
other.
and I was
For those
like,
that don't know, this is an
is
Elestral
Humbust gonna be
from the Fire
reprinted?
Starter Decks of base set, getting a reprint
It
here
is.
that when you cast a rune, an
A lot
opponent
more
must send
easy
2
to,
cards from the top of their deck to
lot
their
easier
underworld,
to
and you
now
can
to
do this up
obtain.
to 4
So
times
that's
in
cool.
a turn. This is really the primary way to run a defensive Mill deck in Elestrals as an alternative win cons, where your opponent decks out before they even, have a chance to use all their spirits. But the real thing about this Humbust is that it has a new ascension, and that ascension is Humburst. And I'm not kidding when I say
I love how they just added 1 letter. I was like, yes, this is good.
I believe that Humburst is like S+ tier Elestral and creature design in general. Moms actually knocked this one out of the park. I love me some Humburst. It is a 4 attacker with 3 defense and fire and solar. So blending those elements together, you can disenchant a fire and a solar spirit from this Humburst to force an opponent to send the top 6 cards from their deck to the underworld. That's right, they're forced to mill 6 from this thing blowing itself up, basically, or if you can enchant more spirits to it, you can have it basically use that blow up effect to force them to mill. And I think that there's a few key cards to highlight with this. This is searchable with First Light, and it can work really well as a late game finisher after you utilize your Humbust effect. So I can't wait.
Okay, that is fair. That is fair. I was thinking about this in a completely different light. But that is true. If you're going with this late game, you don't have to keep it on board. You can just disenchant the spirits that you get from it to just force them to the top 6, and potentially you just win off that. I was thinking about this, that this is a card you want to keep on the field, and therefore you want to get 2 fire and 2 solar on it so that you can expend 1 of each, keep it on the field to force your opponent to send the top 6, and then go for a bit more of a defensive strategy. Me thinking that way is bad. That is a very bad card in that case. However, I didn't even think about this in terms of you don't have to keep it on the field. It could just be a very late game thing after your opponent's already sent a bunch of cards to their underworld. So there is potential, and by that same virtue, if you're going through that, the stats literally do not matter at all. So 4-3, I was thinking that was way too low for this card, but if you are just, if this is the last card effect that you're going to activate during the clash, the stats literally do not matter. This could have been a 1-1 and it would have been perfectly fine. So I see the vision. I do see the vision. I don't think it's super amazing because you do have to, ascend into it, which is easier said than done, especially in Mill, where the only defensive strategy sort of that you have is your counter runes. That's all you have. You don't really have a very easy way to keep your guys in the field with stuff that's not counter rune based, where a lot of other decks somewhat have that capability. Earth Beatdown, obviously, you guys just have high attack, so they're hard to hit over. And some cards just have built-in protection in their effects. And now, obviously, in Solar, granted, this is Humburst, who is in Solar, so you could do this. You can go Argo, which still is obviously counter-rune, into the Golden Fleece, though, and the Golden Fleece can protect it for 1 attack or card effect. I don't think it's super amazing, but we'll see. There is a lot of potential for it in the Mill strategy. I imagine Mill players will be playing this card. I don't think this card, though, is going to change Mill to be a meta-defining strategy, nor do I think Lumaru or Ruminos will as well. Those cards are just slightly more annoying in that regard.
Wait to see what people cook up with Humburst. This is a card that, like I said, I really love it. I think its design is S tier, and I really think it's a fun effect as a 1 of or maybe a 2 of in some more explosive Mill deck.
I'm not gonna comment on him saying that the design is S tier because we have to see it first. We first have to see it in action before we can give a proper what's the wording I'm looking for? A proper evaluation of the card. So we'll see just how well designed it is once Daybreak releases, or once people are actually going through with testing for Daybreak. We'll see.
And last but certainly not least, you might be surprised to see this card added into this reveal, but it is a new artifact rune, Bow of Apollo.
Bow of Apollo.
Bow of Apollo is Apollo's signature artifact indeed, and it is a one.
That is strange. I was thinking that was just Golden Fleece. No, there's just two different artifacts. Okay. It's also the first one-cost artifact that's tied to the actual god. So we'll see.
Cost solar artifact that says the empowered Elestral can attack opponent's spirit decks directly.
Oh no. This is indirect. Maybe it is directly mill support. It is in the mill video. I'm just thinking, just from the first effect, enchant this onto a Ruminos. That Ruminos with now 2 spirits on it can attack directly and mill 6 cards. And if you nexus onto it, you can mill 9, 12, potentially upwards of 15 cards, depending on what you have. Yeah,
when Apollo is enchanted and you deal damage to your opponent, you can return a solar spirit from your underworld to your spirit deck. So you get a little regeneration there when paired with Apollo. But the applications for both...
I'll be honest, that second effect does not matter at all. The first effect is the really interesting part of the effect. That just allows your Empowered Elestral to attack the spirit deck directly. Also, something that has been a quirk with a lot of these card effects as of late, but we haven't really seen anything of. With this card in particular, it says the Empowered Elestral can attack opponents' spirit decks directly. Plural. I'm pretty sure he said this in the past. He's wording them like this just in case he plans to have a 4-player format in the future. So that currently just doesn't really mean anything. It's just he's wording them like this in case he has a 4-player what's it? For a 4-player format. I don't know why I can't think of words today. In the future. But that is kind of interesting because are we getting a 4-player format? It's kind of interesting. This has been obviously a thing for a while, so this isn't like anything super new. But I just thought it was interesting to mention.
Apollo are enormous. I mentioned this in the same context as Ruminous, an Elestral that really relies on dealing damage directly, and as more of those are introduced into Elestrals, Bow of Apollo and its validity will increase. This is also a 1-cost artifact, so we'll see if that makes any difference there for all my artifact enjoyers. But Bow of Apollo is going to have some really cool use cases in Daybreak and beyond as a unique artifact allowing you to attack directly. I told y'all today's reveal was hype, and as a casual...
Again, the second effect of Bow of Apollo does not matter. It's the first effect that matters. Allowing the Empowered Elestral to just attack directly is just insane. Depending on the context, obviously. He mentioned it, I mentioned it, Ruminos just being able to attack directly, that's kind of crazy. It's kind of insane. It's just kind of insane. There realistically isn't too much that you would care to put this on. It can be very interesting for late game strategies where your opponent has like a bunch of defense position Elestrals, but you have the Bow of Apollo and they only have 3 spirits remaining. You just equip that to one of your 3-cost Elestrals, and you're just like, okay, fine, attack over all your guys, and boom, I win. That has a lot of potential, so I think there is something there worth of note. So that's kind of interesting.
Well, mill enjoyer myself, I just love me some Humburst. Let me know what you guys think about Lumaru, Ruminous, Humburst, and of course Bow of Apollo. And we'll be back for another.
Yeah, some interesting reveals. Obviously, as I said at the very beginning, I was hoping these cards would not be very strong, just because I'm not a huge fan of mill. The unfortunate part about this whole thing is that they have potential. There is a lot of potential for mill to be a genuine strategy. I feel like these cards, it's not saying much that a card is slow in Elestrals, because basically every single card in Elestrals is pretty slow. And But the realistically, the only exception is Nexusing from Spark It onto an Astraba. That is just an unbelievable effect that you can accomplish. But like I wouldn't necessarily say these cards are slow because they realistically aren't. These are pretty fast cards, if we're being entirely honest. I mean, Lumaru, if you're going second, you just cast it out, you destroy an Elestral with it, and you immediately mill 3. If you somehow are able to just stay alive for that Lumaru, you can go straight into a Humburst next turn, mill 6. it's kind of insane. You pair that with something like a Bow of Apollo, you could potentially mill a whole lot more. Humburst is there to just mill a whole lot more. You could potentially mill like half of your opponent's deck in just like 3 turns potentially, which isn't bad for mill decks. It's kind of crazy, if we're being entirely honest. So that's what's concerning me about these cards. They have a lot of potential, and I would rather mill not be a powerhouse deck in the next format, is what I'm going to say. But whatever happens, happens. We'll see. They're interesting, to say the very least. I like some of the design around them. I think there is a bit of interesting stuff here. I especially do like Bow of Apollo, despite the fact that I think it could be abused. I do really like it as a 1-cost artifact that allows you to just basically attack the spirit deck directly. I could actually see a lot of decks getting this from deck with Argo just to close out a game. It's a definite potential. What the frick am I saying? But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It is very, very interesting to say the least. But guys, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to stop by, comment, and subscribe for more. Hope to see all you guys in the next video. Goodbye.